going to be doing a book review for every single book that I read in 2022. Here is a look at all of the books. I'm going to be starting with Rental Property Investing. Rental Property Investing by Brandon Turner. I thought that it was a pretty good book in terms of being informative on what rental property investing entails and the money that it would require and the amount of work that it would require initially, at least. I think that it was good in that sense. Now, I think that it personally deterred me from doing any kind of rental property investing because of, one, the amount of money that it would just take in order to get into something like that, and also the amount of time investment that it would require. So I don't think that I'll be doing any rental property investing anytime. Next was The Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason, Clason, or however you say his name. I thought that was a great book for finances. It was just basically teaching about principles of, saving, investing, and budgeting. I think it was set in ancient times, right? So it's a short book. If you are interested in getting into financial literacy, I think this is a great starter book, though the wording is very archaic, right? It's how they spoke back then, not how we speak really now. So if you can get past that, I think that you would be very intrigued by this book. Overall, on a scale from 1 to 10, I would give this book a 9. It's a solid book, pretty short book. Next up was I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit, Sethi. I hope I'm saying that right. But this was probably one of my favorite books this year because it is so informative in how to basically manage your finances and eventually become rich. This book teaches you how to become slow rich, not quick rich, which a lot of people don't really have the patience for. So if you can get through this book and you follow the principles in this book, in a couple decades, you will be very well off. So I follow almost every single principle that's in this book. This book also taught me valuable information about HSAs, health savings accounts, and I opened one because of what I read in this book, and I think that it's so incredibly helpful. He explains every single financial principle thoroughly in this book and tells you exactly how you can apply it to your own personal finances. So if you are looking for another financial book to read this coming year, I thought this was fantastic. On a scale from 1 to 10, I would give it a 10. Next up is Poor Economics by a couple of university professors. I think that they were specifically MIT professors, but I thought that this book was extremely informative on how global poverty manifests itself in different countries, developing countries around the world. And this is definitely information that I had not known before, but it felt more so like a university textbook rather than an informative educational book. I guess the two are the same, but this felt very dense and it was research heavy. So they were explaining the research and the experiments that they conducted to obtain the different research items that they had collected. So for example, they had done an experiment on ensuring the global poor, and they explained why this didn't work because there is corruption. I kind of explained it in the past as well, but it was very informative for them to describe their experiments and the results of their experiments and what they concluded from their experiments, but it felt very research heavy. Though if you're looking for a book that is more so research heavy and feels like a college textbook, then I would recommend this book. Overall, I would say my main takeaway as to why the global poor is globally poor, I would say it's because of corrupt governments and the lack of resources to these different individuals in these poor developing countries. So I would more or less blame governments. If I had to rank this on a scale from 1 to 10, I would give it a 7 because it was a little dense. Last but not least, I read The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. I thought that this was an incredibly insightful book in discussing our behavior surrounding money and how we save it, budget it, and invest it. And I thought that this book didn't give any real financial advice, but rather it gave me a different perspective on how to think about money, how I spend it, how I save it, how I invest it. And one important stat that really stuck out at me was that, and I'm paraphrasing this, so if you read the book, it might sound different. He basically mentioned how the average American home has increased by 2 or 3 times, so in terms of square footage. So I thought that that was interesting because did we suddenly need more space, or did we just desire more space because that makes us all seem more so successful, right? So people tend to judge people on the size of their home. The bigger the home, the more the success that person has. So this book challenged that, and considering things like what does that person have in their bank account, what do they have in their retirement account, and even if they have all the money in the world, it's not something that I need to be comparing myself to. So I thought that was a great perspective, and how we basically need so much more now as Americans to be content with our lives, when before we were happy with much less. So if you're looking for an insightful money book, not necessarily about how to budget, save, and invest, but rather understanding your behavior surrounding money, this is a fantastic book for that. On a scale from 1 to 10, I would give this book an 11. So those are all of the books that I've read in 2022. I hope you enjoyed this small book review on the books that I've read. I know that this was very financially heavy. I wanted to focus on improving my finances in 2022, which I was able to do so following the advice that I actually read in I Will Teach You to Be Rich, and I share that with a coworker that's following the same advice, so it's all good. I plan to read more socially heavy books in 2023, so I want to learn more about historical events and social policies in 2023 so I can better answer the questions that I ask on this page and have better background on historical issues. So those are the books that I read in 2022. Please share the books that you read in 2022 below, or share a book that you would recommend that I read in 2023.